So we've got an update on the situation with Michigan and the sign stealing scandal currently going on. According to ESPN, Big-10 coaches spent 90 minutes on a video call with Commissioner Tony Petitti and want him to take action now. Another source says he will have to act or he will lose the coaches and the athletic directors. So they're getting pretty aggressive there, Brady Quinn.
Lose them where?
Just their support.
Where are they going to go?
Right.
Where are they going to go? What are they going to do if he doesn't do anything? So there's a few issues with this, and this isn't like hey, I'm backing Michigan or I'm against Michigan here. It's more about how the process of punishment within college football is typically taking place. It's typically done by the NCAA. The NCAA is currently investigating Michigan in a couple of ways. Obviously, there's the Jim Harbaugh stuff that's going on. There's also the Matt Weiss, the offensive coordinator stuff, that was actually an FBI investigation for computer crimes. That's also going on. So there's a couple things that the NCAA is looking into in regards to Michigan. The part that's a little bit odd is all these coaches have known this has gone on for years. There's even photos now dating back to Connor Stalions being on the sidelines in 2019, 2018, before he was technically, quote-unquote, employed as an employee of the university. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But I guess it points out the fact that we don't even know how long this has been going on. People have tried to create this narrative like, oh, it's been going on since they've won the last two Big-10 championships. We don't even know that now. The more photos surface, the more things that are out there, they're still trying to sort through all this. And also, we don't know who all Connor Stalions was involved with. We saw him on the Central Michigan sidelines giving signals to their staff. We're still waiting for an explanation from Central Michigan about this. So, one, we don't have all the facts, and yet we're rushing to judgment, which I think is always a dangerous precedent to set. The other thing is this has never been a commissioner's duty or responsibility. People tend to use that Michigan State fight that occurred in the tunnel there in Ann Arbor as a reason being for Petitti to get involved in all this. That was different. Those young men could have been charged criminally for assault. This is entirely different. This is like it's cheating in gamesmanship. This isn't assault on a young man or on a human being. So it's completely different. So please spare me trying to use the Michigan State fight that took place in the tunnel as an example for how the Big-10 reacted to it. That was where people could literally charge a crime, okay? This would be precedent setting in a manner of which the commissioner would then get involved with these sorts of violations or rules that would be broken. We've never seen this before for something like this. I don't know that Tony Petitti wants to be the first to do that. And on top of it, they don't have a robust group that does these sorts of investigations. They would have to consult or outsource to do this, which means it's not going to happen in a timely manner. The NCAA does have a group that investigates these sorts of claims or violations. So they're much better suited for it. So I understand people out there who feel like they've been wrong, Michigan is caught red-handed, that they want punishment. But let's make sure we go about doing it the right way. So then when your school is the next that's potentially in trouble, you're not going to be complaining about the punishment because of the precedent that's set right now. And that's the sticky situation that the Big-10 and Tony Petitti find themselves in. But as far as these coaches and athletic directors moaning and complaining about the lack of action taken, give me a break. You know this has been going on for years, and now you're trying to finally mail this in? It seems extremely odd, and it seems like in Tony Petitti in his first year as commissioner, they're trying to force him with leverage now and public perception that he needs to act, he needs to do something. And I think it could set a terrible precedent for the Big-10 moving forward.
That's the part that bothers me, in particular Michigan State and their athletic director coming out and using the fight in the tunnel as some sort of, it would be hypocritical if you didn't, throw the book at him now and do it in a quick manner like he did for us last year. And then the guy's got the balls to come out and say, he mentions, the alterations. This is from the ESPN article. He mentioned the alterations Michigan State needed to undergo in order to prepare for its October 21st game against Michigan after receiving a call Wednesday of that game week about Michigan having Michigan State signals. Okay. Like, are we really going to play this game? Like, if you're Michigan State, don't you have other issues you need to worry about? Like, don't you have other things going on with your program? Like, why did you have Adolf Hitler show up on the scoreboard before the game during a trivia round?
That did happen.
Like, what about your former head coach who admitted to having phone sex with somebody he brought in who was speaking as a rape victim? There's all this
survivor.
stuff. Yeah, like all this stuff going around, and Michigan State's out there wanting to throw stones and demanding action. And all these other, to your point, you knew about this, and you delayed, and you waited at least a year based on the evidence of everything we have. So if I'm Petiti, I'd just be like, all right, well, since you guys waited a year to let anybody here know about it, we're going to wait a year to put a punishment down. Tough balls.
There's a lot of exposure to what's going on. I think the one of the good points that Q just made is that you're continuing to put this, whoever you are, you're continuing to let this play out in public court, public domain. And you're going to continue. Some people are very cut and dry. If you broke the rules, you broke the rules. And so once those rules are exposed and they continuously are being peppered within the listening and paying attention audience, you're clearly going to have two sides emerge. You're going to have one side that is pro-Michigan, and you're going to have another side that's anti-Michigan. So it doesn't really become about the facts that are surrounding what's going on. It doesn't really surround it being, a just, approach to what the outcome is. It's us or Michigan. And that's kind of how it kind of unfolds. And the more it plays out in the media, what it really does is it does put pressure on the Big-10, and it does put pressure on Michigan. Because while it may, whatever the level of rule breaking that it may measure up to be, it's still a rule break, and it's still considered to be a rule break that gives the team what would be considered an unnecessary advantage over their opponents. So it's hard to kind of comprehend it in a way where you would say, everybody does it, so keep it moving on. It's very clear that, sure, everybody does something that is beyond the realm of the rules. People break the rules all the time, but again, you're caught. And I think that's the biggest thing here. For one reason or another, it's Michigan. They're caught. What happens now? The pressure of what happens now, that push to having, a disciplinary action take place. I mean, it ultimately, to me, comes down to you're looking at a situation where they are not wanting to compete with a contender. This is a team that is good enough and could have been good enough to win the national title. If you think about it, I said Ohio State wins that game against Georgia if Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't go out. Well, if you think about it, Michigan spanked Ohio State. So they gave it up to TCU, but nonetheless, they were good enough to be in the game before the national championship game, the national championship round. So I think a lot of this has to do with fear. They don't want to compete with Michigan right now. And so you try to even the playing field by bringing other elements into play so that you don't have a full-powered Michigan. You lose Harbaugh as the coach, you lose what Michigan has and why they're able to win.
And Michigan and Georgia are the co-favorites to win the national title right now, courtesy of our friends with DraftKings, plus 240.
But would they be favored if they don't have Harbaugh as their coach?
Well, no, I think the punishment would probably be – I mean, is it even possible, Brady, that they could tell them this late in the game, yeah, you just can't be a part of the college football playoff? If a punishment got handed down that quick.
Like a bowl ban.
Yeah, like immediately. I mean, like, when does that happen?
I think you would sacrifice the coach before you would do that.
Again, it would be precedent setting in that way. I can't recall a time where we've seen something for something like this happen so quickly without having a formal investigation. And I also understand the problem with that is if you wait, it punishes next year's group of players and next year's coaching staff if Jim Harbaugh's not even there, right? Like all the violations during that run for USC didn't impact Pete Carroll. He moved on to Seattle Seahawks. It impacted every coach and player for that next 5 to 6, 7 year period at USC afterwards. And so that's the problem with a lot of the punishment of the NCAA. It's always retroactive in the sense of it's they're looking backwards but then punishing forwards, which doesn't make any sense, right? So it's hard to know where this is going to go, but I do think Tony Petitti's got to be very careful about setting a precedent here moving forward because, I mean, look, you don't have to take my opinion. I've said this from the jump. This goes on at a lot of places. And so I'm not going to use that as the reason to justify what Michigan has done. Clearly, they've overstepped their bounds. But the problem is, if you're going to catch Michigan for doing it, then you've really got to start investigating a lot of other people who do it as well. And that's the hard thing is once you open up Pandora's box for Tony Petitti and the Big-10, where does the investigation stop? Like at what point, like where do you start to draw their boundaries of what they're going to enforce, what they're not, how they're going to punish, how they're not? How does that punishment differentiate from the NCAA?